So it becomes very important that you have these communities, you give what they want and brand it in a manner so that somewhere your company also benefits. Not that to open, so you can't use the same brand name. So, but you have to have very innovative branding strategies so that the company also helps, because there's no shying away from the fact to support these chatbots or to support these AI tools, you do need money. And for that, having a holistic idea of the business and branding is very important. And yet, I'm saying it again and again, patient is the only reason why anybody exists in this healthcare ecosystem. So your ultimate aim has to be to better patient outcomes and nothing else.
Hello everyone. Welcome in the second episode of the Mad Talk powered by Game of Pharma Season 2. And today we have very special guest, Mrs. Gauri Chaudhari, who is co-founder of Brand Inner World and also healthcare and brand strategist, and worked with many healthcare and pharmaceutical brands, and now a author of Amazon best-selling book, The Perfect Pill, perfect book of healthcare and pharmaceutical community. Welcome on the show, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lokesh. It's indeed my pleasure to be part of this podcast, something that I really look forward to, because that's the way we talk about this industry, which is otherwise very complex industry for a lay person to understand. So thank you so much and pleasure to be here.
Like, start with some common topics, ma'am, because everyone right now is talking about the Z, and in like our industry, the 75% people wants to know about the A, B, C of the industries, because they are very common terminology. At the same time, they can go into the more depth. So my first question start with in pharmaceutical, it's common terms like generic, branded generic, and branded medicine. So what's the like difference between them, and how we can create a distinction between these drugs?
Yeah. So Lokesh, very simply, we have something called patented drugs. What happens, a pharma company works on research and development. They invent molecules or chemical entities which become medicines after rigorous testing and the rigorous regulation, whatever, all that part happens, and then it becomes a medicine. So they give a brand name to that medicine and they take a patent. They take a patent so that someone else cannot simply copy it and launch it. So those are called patented medicine or brand name medicine in a world scenario, like world over, that is how they are called. To give you an example, suppose there's anti-diabetic medicine called metformin. Now, metformin is a chemical entity, or what we call is a generic in that particular medicine. Now, when BMS worked for this molecule and they actually branded it glucophage and took a patent for that, glucophage, which has chemical entity or generic called metformin, becomes a brand name medicine or patented medicine. Now in India, we have 3% of drugs or 3% of brands which are patented. Now there comes the second category. Because India had a certain patent law established in 1957, we have a huge number of branded generics, which essentially means that same metformin in India is not under patent. And there are 137 formulations of metformin. And all of them have a name attached to it. People have given, or the companies have given brand name to it. So all 137 brands of metformin will be called branded generic, brands under branded generic category. And then we also have metformin available as just metformin name. And that particular medicine will have a manufacturer's name saying that XYZ company or manufactured by ABC company. But the pack will have simple name of the chemical entity metformin. And they become generic. So we call them either pure generic or generic. And there are good number of metformins available in the market just with its chemical entity. Now, in the retail market, if you go and if you just ask for metformin, chemist is going to give you one of the brand name. But if you go into hospitals or if you go into public, primary care, chances are when you ask for a generic metformin, you will get metformin. There's a possibility of that. And that's where this entire concept of brand name, branded generic and generic becomes slightly complex. But that is something India has. And world over, we see all these three categories of medicines available. The percentages would differ, but you will have brand name medicines, branded generics, and you will also have generic.
Like clearly explain distinction between branded generic and the generic. Okay. And also you mentioned that it differs like from where you are taking the medicine. It can be like a community pharmacy or hospitals or some Jan Aushadhi Kendra from the government side. How it differs, ma'am? Like because I think in the hospital, what I have observed also, like they only have some brands only, not like all the generic also, the branded generic also. So what's your views on that?
Yeah. So technically, we should have all the brands and all the generics available in each and every place. Like today, generics are not available so much in retail because, there are inventory related concerns. There are cost implications. So what you see that any pharmacy chain or a pharmacy shop will have couple of branded generics. But technically, everyone should have all those. Why does it happen that they don't have is mainly because you can't have 137 brands of metformin stocked in your pharmacy. It will increase hugely the cost. On the top of it, there'll be at least 70, 80 metformin generic. So if you add to them, there are so many SKUs you will have to stock keeping units you will have to keep. So practically it becomes difficult for a chemist and he or she decides just to pick and choose those which do really well in his area.
So yeah,
or
here
really doing well in the country. I mean, the top 3-4 he will always have.
Yeah, so here only reps comes in the picture, we can say. So, ma'am, in your recent article also in Economics Time, you mentioned that only 10% drugs are in the generic format only. Was that, and can you just elaborate this whole statement?
Yeah. So what has happened in our country that branded generics have really grown, and we are not seeing that there are so many equivalents available in the generic market. So if you see the breakup, we have 3% patented, 87% branded generics and 10% generic. Now, Jan Aushadhi Kendra, and I personally have visited so many of them often, I have asked for equivalents in generic. One, either they don't exist or they were not available at Jan Aushadhi. So somewhere there is a need. So if tomorrow government really wants to push generics to reduce cost of healthcare, we have to first make them available. And secondly, we have to make them accessible. That means every chemist shop will have certain generic medicines always available with them. And that's the necessity. If one feels genuinely one wants generics to be a very significant part of healthcare ecosystem.
Yes, ma'am, getting your point. Like, accessibility is also a factor for the government. Today's time, the two buzzwords are there. The first one is the AI, and then second was the NMC guidelines. So in the healthcare ecosystem. So, ma'am, like according to NMC guidelines, doctors only prescribe these generic drugs. So what's your views how it will impact this pharmaceutical industry, at the same time the patient care also, because it is also a main factor for this whole healthcare industry, the patient care.
Right. So NMC guidelines essentially, or NMC regulation essentially says that the doctors must prescribe medicines only by generic name. And here the word is only by generic name. Now, it is going to impact every stakeholder. It's going to impact patients, it's going to impact doctors, it's going to impact the pharma industry. But let's talk about patient first, because everyone exists for patients and patient care is the most important part. The problem that here is that in India, because branded generics have been present for so many years, the companies have really developed them, adding certain value. At least that is what is expected of a company. And if company is not doing it, then they have no right to be really branded. But good number of medicines are differentiated. Now, what has happened is that it's very difficult for a common person to understand, or even sometimes all those voices and the authorities find it slightly difficult to understand. So let me give you an example. Suppose a person is suffering from low back pain and a doctor wants to give him diclofenac. Now, diclofenac, if we say, is a chemical entity or a generic name. Now, there are various types of diclofenac medicines available in a branded generic market. Some of them would be enteric coated, which means that they don't open up in abdomen, in the sense in the stomach. They move to the smaller intestine and they open up there. What is the benefit? The benefit is that as a result of this formulation, a patient, if he's suffering from acidity or ulcer, doesn't feel so much of acidity. And at the same time, if the patient has ulcer, then enteric coated tablet will at least not worsen the condition. So in that case, one diclofenac which is enteric coated would be, and let's say it is called brand name A, will be different from chemical entity diclofenac, which is in generic form. Now, third could be another brand, which is extended release. Fourth could be fast release. Fifth could be some other formulation. So the point is that just by saying diclofenac, you are not really, you're not really comparing two apples. These are apples and oranges, because all these enteric coated, extended release, fast release all are going to be different brands. So when you say only generic prescription, how are we going to sort this out? So that's the first thing, that all formulations are not the same. Point number two, in the formulation part only, the excipients play a very important role. Let's take another example. We all have eye drops, and there are eye drops for different eye infections or eye conditions. Now, some eye drops will have preservatives, which could be BAK, that is benzalkonium chloride, which actually causes irritation to the eye. Now, a few will be without it. So a brand A, which is without preservative, cannot be compared with brand B, which is with preservative, benzalkonium. And third generic maybe, which has altogether another preservative. So all these are different. And a doctor would like to then pick and choose the one which is right for the patient. If patient has very bad condition, and if you really don't want any further irritation, you wouldn't want the one with, the most irritating preservative. So likewise, there are so many ways by which brands differ. And all these brands from their side try to add value to the formulation. And it could be the formulation, it could be the packaging, it could be the kind of raw material they choose from. It could be simply the beyond the pill services that they do. Lot of companies spend in helping doctors diagnose better, treat better, educate patients better so that they remain adherent to therapy. So multiple ways brands keep adding value. I mean, in my book, I have written some 20 ways of differentiating brand and differentiating them in a manner that they ultimately help patients. So these possibilities exist, and pharma companies must invest further on this and make these branded generics more and more value added. When we say that generic only, we just completely go away from this possibility of value addition. Second important point for patients, and I don't know how many will agree, but I strongly believe in that brands bring trust and confidence. Now, in our day-to-day life, we want our shoes to be branded, we want our clothes to be branded. Even people who are less economically affording, they want their children go to a private school and not to a public school. Reason being that brands play certain role on our minds. And placebo is a concept our industry has come out with. What does it mean? That even when you are given chalk powder, which is calcium carbonate, just because there's a placebo effect, your blood pressure starts coming under control. Now, there's no connection, but the placebo works. So the brands also help you. And we are not here talking about placebo brands. We are talking about value-added brands. So when you simply take them out of the system, you're actually impacting patient care. Second is doctors. Now, what has happened is that because of the huge healthcare pressure our system has, because of our population, our expenditure on healthcare, there is a kind of tensed relation between doctors and patients. And now when doctor is giving a generic and a pharmacist or a chemist is going to hand over X generic from Y company, then how can a doctor take responsibility of its effectiveness? And that's what is bothering doctors the most. They have also seen that the clinical efficacy changes many times with the brand or even the generic that they are giving. So how can they be responsible if things don't go right is their question. So they get hugely impacted. Also, if you're like, I was just reading one of the comments on my article, somebody while supporting the branded generic and generic being prescribed on the same prescription, the person said that such a narrow window of anti-epileptic. Now, what if the person is taking one brand today and generic tomorrow and generic of third company day after tomorrow? The clinical efficacy is going to change, and the person may, because of the shorter therapeutic window, may get very adversely impacted. So that is what happens between the doctors and the patients. And third, for the industry, which has played such important role for the past so many years, this industry will have no incentive to put back into the market, to put back into the system to help patients, which essentially means that patient camps, diagnosis, overall education, all that can stand still. So I remember, just to give you another example, Lokesh, in thyroid market, thyroid was almost unknown. Like when my mother many years back was suffered from thyroid, there was a time we did not know what was happening to her. We couldn't even go and explain to doctor. But today, if certain symptoms are there, one, that patient will not ignore it, immediately move to doctor. And doctor will also, a primary physician will also have hypo or hyperthyroidism on the top of his or her mind, and will get the patient tested. Now, how has this happened? The industry has spent a lot of money, efforts, and hours into educating people for this chronic disorder like thyroidism, which is very common amongst Indians because of certain reasons. So the incentive to this industry to help patients, so that ultimately businesses also have to earn money to put back into the system. So that incentive goes away. And then it doesn't really serve any good purpose, in my opinion, to anyone.
The next question, like we talked about, like first one is the NMC and second was the AI. So somehow these medical apps in current healthcare ecosystem and web-based platforms have changed how branding was working in previously in this ecosystem. So what's your thoughts on this, that how branding will change, and is there any mindset of a brand manager will change in next upcoming years or in these years?
Right. Very interesting question, Lokesh. If you see what's happening outside a typical pharma industry, you see is that a lot of innovations are happening in managing your disease conditions. And along with that, patients are also changing. Patients also want to try each and everything. So if someone is suffering from any disease, the person tries everything. In my opinion, and I could be completely wrong, but in my opinion, a lot of pharma companies are still looking at healthcare solutions as pills or as medicines. But in reality, your condition can be managed by multiple ways. And therefore, expanding the scope of your solutions is very important. Again, to give you an example, I was sitting, chatting with one doctor, my, friendly doctor, and I was also working on one insight mining project. So I asked her that a lot of these days that patients are talking about managing health condition, diabetes with health apps. What is your opinion? And she said, absolutely good idea. It's not necessary that you have to pop in a pill so that you can control your diabetes. As long as you are monitoring your blood glucose levels very well, and if you're exercising as per the app's guidelines or the way app is pushing you to do, the food that you're supposed to be eating, the calorie count that app helps you manage, there is no problem. And no pharma company should also have a problem with it for two reasons. They should also be able to provide pill plus solutions. There's no harm. Nobody should define healthcare solution just as a medicine or pill. On the second hand, what also happens is that people try apps and they also fail, because lifestyle change at times is not easy. For somebody, app is fantastic. For other person, the app doesn't help because you're not adhering to the exercise given by the app, the lifestyle given by the app. So the person goes back to the pill. And when that person goes back to the pill, he's not defaulting on it. The adherence goes up. So as a result, pharma companies have to open up this entire solution and give multiple options. So your brand called, say, Gluco Max or Gluco, least name, some brand name, may have one option as a pill, but may also have the app branded with the same brand name, clearly mentioning it's an app or AI tool or something to manage your disease, and both should perfectly exist. And your branding has to stretch across these offerings.
Same as you have mentioned one of the example in my previous company also. So one of the previous companies, so diabetes is something which needs patient attention on the daily basis. So we just create a patient community there, and like for the simple work, so patient community like for the daily questions. So suppose if someone wants to ask that how much of rice I can eat, or like it will I can eat the simple white rice or some brown rice, what will not impact my blood sugar level too much. So these are the simple questions, but it creates a community and patients can share their experiences also. And yeah, it will be a good like branding matter for us, and we get some good traction on this community. So it gives the results at the end of the day, and branding matters also.
Yeah, and one more point, Lokesh, and that is maybe because your audience probably will also be brand managers. The point here is that when you are having patient communities and you are talking as a brand, pharma brand, to patients, you are not supposed to directly talk about the medical aspect of it as per the regulation. So it becomes very important that you have these communities, you give what they want and brand it in a manner so that somewhere your company also benefits. Not that to open, so you can't use the same brand name. So, but you have to have very innovative branding strategies so that the company also helps, because there's no shying away from the fact to support these chatbots or to support these AI tools, you do need money. And for that, having a holistic idea of the business and branding is very important. And yet, I'm saying it again and again, patient is the only reason why anybody exists in this healthcare ecosystem. So your ultimate aim has to be to better patient outcomes and nothing else. So what else can you do with partnering with every stakeholder and help that patient so he or she achieves what they want to achieve?
Yeah, totally agree, ma'am. And at the end of the day, is the matter of business outcome and the patient care.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
yeah. Ma'am, like you worked on the different projects, okay? You worked on medical devices also, OTC also, prescription medical, prescription medicines also. So what is like one project which clearly, like memorable experience of yours, which clearly defines the healthcare branding in the business outcome also and in the patient care also? One of the example.
Yeah, okay. There's so many examples,
Yeah.
I mean, but let me pick the little difficult type. So a lot of people, it's A lot of people know how to do branding in prescription medicine, how to do branding, say, in medical devices, a lot easy. OTC, absolutely easy, because you're directly talking to patients, or you're directly talking to your customers who are doctors. It was relatively easy, I would say. But we were working on one surgical, and surgical was a suture. Now, suture is something that you actually use during operations to stitch up the wounds or stitch up the cuts. So we were working on one brand from a company. And whenever we would talk about sutures to the doctors would say, I mean, what are you even talking about? I mean, it's okay. Suture is the least important thing on the doctor's plate, because in the end, when the main work has happened and successful operation has happened, the suturing happens at the end, and it doesn't matter which brand you use. But interestingly, this brand had very smooth kind of a feel. And the benefits of that smoothness were directly felt by the patients also. So they did extensive study where with this brand sutures and with another brand suture. But, doctors were not either paying attention and not even were, really interested. So they said, whatever suture is available in the hospital, we'll use. And even in their personal hospitals, they were like going with whatever was available. So what we did was, we actually realized while talking to doctors that doctors actually don't touch sutures. It's the nurse who puts it on a tray. And even if the doctor himself suturing, he uses gloves. So doctor wouldn't know the difference between the softness of this brand vis-a-vis the coarseness of other available sutures. So what we did, we actually stopped talking to doctors about the smoothness. We sent one direct mail on the doctor's residence address, and all that it had was one nice piece of leather and two stitched parts. One was stitched with our brand, the other was with which was very commonly used. And what happens when a doctor sitting at his home, he receives this packet or a parcel, he opens it, he sees there are just two sutures, no apparent note. There was a note on the backside of it. And your first human instinct is to touch. And doctor obviously is not wearing gloves at home. So they would just touch it and they would see very, very tangible difference between this brand and the other brand. And then a doctor would read behind and say, oh, did you find one smoother? And if you have, then do consider it next time in your operation theater. And the branding was there after those written lines, and the brand name was put at the bottom. It did phenomenally well. Something the medical representative was trying to say again and again to doctors. Doctors were not paying attention. Obviously, they were very busy in a very clinical setting. So after these mailers, when medical representatives started talking about why this brand is smooth and what precautions we take while manufacturing and the source of the raw material, blah, 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 it instantly connected with doctors. And then medical representative found it easy to break that resistance that doctor had in the beginning.
So it clearly shows, ma'am, how everyone is talking about the multi-channel marketing. So it's not just the digital, it's the impact of the physical marketing also. It's just that how you can leverage with your mind. Yeah, totally agree, ma'am. So, ma'am, you have a wealth of experience in the brand consultancy. Okay, so how it differs a branding of a branded medicine, okay, and the generic medicine, and is there any challenges for generic medicines to in the how it brands to the doctors or to the patients?
So technically speaking, a generic medicine should not be doing any marketing in a very technical speaking. And that's what NMC is even trying to target. What they're saying is that branded medicines spend money on marketing, and as a result of which they become expensive. So go for generic. Now, if generics spend money on marketing, will they be expensive? I have no idea. That depends on their way of handling their P&L. But point is that because patients would look for brands, so even if you bring generics, they'll have to do certain amount of marketing. And in that case, the branding will be prominent of the corporate company. So people will start differentiating brand of, say, generic brand of company X from the generic brand of company B. And they will say, oh, I trust company B. So next time when I go to the chemist shop, I'll say, give me that generic or give me that metformin of this company. So the branding will only change its nature. Instead of promoting brands per se, companies will start building their corporate images, and they will continue making marketing, and a branding a big focal point. Because there is no shying away from the fact that brands are here to stay. We all are like, the word brand came from word brander. Brander in Latin meant, burning. So the cattle used to go for grazing, and those cattle used to get lost. So it's very disheartening to say this, but okay, in those days, the farmers used to use a hot rod, and they used to make a mark on the cattle just to identify, oh, this is my cattle. And someone else would have another mark and saying, this is my cattle. But when they used to sell these cattle in the market, people started saying, oh, the one which has got this mark is actually a better animal. So when they used to, for consumption, so that is a better animal. So the branding started then, and people start identifying certain goods from others just because they have identification mark. So since that day, if human beings are for brands, we can't simply take away brands from people's life. And at least not now, when Indian patients are used to brands, taking brands. Doctors are used to prescribing brands, and industry has started differentiating and value-adding brands. Yeah, but okay, your question, I mean, just one line. Yes, tomorrow, if generics become really big and they want to market, they will have to build their corporate brand.
Got it, ma'am. Like, mostly in today's ecosystem, it's mostly about the corporate. Ma'am, like in last 10 years, things has evolved very much. So firstly, we shifted, in the COVID, we shifted to digital. Then after we go depth into the technology, now we are into like AI kind of things where we just get the information easily. We can increase of efficiency by the 10x, because it's the 24 hours only for everyone. How you can utilize in your in the daily life also, and in your work life also, is the matter of the thing. Ma'am, for young professional in these days, new skills are coming. Like we discussed in our podcast also, like new things are there, new changes are there. So how what are these key skills which you think that every young professional has to acquire, and like what's the key learning for them from these current changing ecosystem?
Right. So, Lokesh, there are two things. One is attitude and second is skill. So I would place first value on attitude, and the attitude has to be that I am a student throughout my life. Ours was a relatively lucky generation. We passed out. I did pharmacy, I did MBA, and I say, oh, my education is now done. But today I realize that education doesn't end. Even today, now I am learning and doing courses in AI. I'm studying AI very deeply to understand how it impacts my industry. So this attitude of learning every day, and your generation is fantastic in that sense. You people learn from, every possible source, and that's the best part of it. So learn. Continuous learning is the attitude everyone must have. If you're alive, then you have to be learning. And your learning can come from anywhere. Gone are the days that only colleges and certified institutes are going to give you knowledge. Today, it doesn't matter if I have the certificate or not. What matters, do I have that understanding or not? So be it YouTube, be it any Udemy, Coursera kind of certificate givers, whoever that, as long as you're hungry to learn, then learn. If you don't learn, you're going to be out of the system. The first attitude. Second attitude is stop putting blinkers. and say that this is my industry and this is my area of expertise. The lining is actually diminishing or blurring. The expertise and the industries and the specialization all are the eras of past. Now everything is together and one big spectrum. So don't say this is out of my area of operation. No, everything is your area of operation. Be open for it to understand and apply. So don't be stuck into your own zone. And third important part is that whatever you do, you should know how to apply. Because honestly speaking, I mean, I might be making a slightly bolder statement, but AI has taught us how to think. So thinking largely, can be delegated, though I can't say, completely delegated, but okay, AI does good part of thinking. What AI can't do is execution. What AI can't do is dealing with team of 10 people and their emotions and giving results. So focus on that part. So when you are becoming from 1x to 10x by taking help of AI, remember what is it really adding to your teams, to your customers, to your vendors, and that's where you are. So increase your efficiency on one side, but increase your EQ, increase your other finer, softer skills, because that is something that you cannot just delegate to AI. So that is on the attitude part of it. And in terms of your other skills, I would say learn marketing and branding and selling. We are in this world of, selling our ideas, selling our products, selling our services. So even when your small child is talking to his mother and saying that, give me that one candy, I really like that candy. What is the child doing? Selling. If you do this, mom, I'll do that, and, promises. So selling is a fundamental skill. You sell ideas, you sell everything. So those fundamental skills you have to be really expert at.
So I totally get your point, ma'am. It's just that the adaptability. So we are just discussing about the brands, okay? So the brands who have adapted the new things previously also are grown in this market and are huge in their nature because they have adapted at every step, at every stage of their life. And
right, absolutely, yeah. But in the end, Lokesh, is the EQ that would matter the most now, because AI can't deal with people. It's we who deal with other people. And that's how we, ensure the best possible execution. So that is one skill everyone must have now.
So like you mentioned, ma'am, that AI, you are learning AI. Same, I am also learning AI too. So one thing which is, so everyone is talking that AI will replace my job or something like that. So in healthcare, the one good thing is include human in the loop. In the AI part also, the very common thing which you seen in every blog, every video is just that include human in loop, because getting human like perfection is the thing which you can't expect from AI in the healthcare. So the best including human in the loop and our human centric approach is always be the title of this healthcare ecosystem. So yeah. So thank you so much, ma'am, for this discussion. I really enjoyed this session.
Thank you so much, Lokesh, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. It's always fun to be in touch, with the next generation. And I wish together we can make difference to patients, their life, and the patient outcomes. So all of us are together in it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Surely, ma'am. Surely, ma'am. We will create an. Thank you.
Thank you so much.